Well, hello and welcome. There may be nobody here now, but I just decided to go live and share a few thoughts that I have. So I will give people a minute to see if anybody happens to join us. And if not, we'll share these random thoughts anyway and see what people might think. But I'm just sitting around here today on a nice Sunday afternoon, kind of thinking about all the things that we can do to make change, and want to encourage people to do things that they can do to make change. And I think that we're in a position right now where there are some things that people can do. And I see a couple of people joining us here. So thanks for joining. Again, this is just kind of random and live. But what I wanted to do is have a little bit of maybe not a conversation. I just wanted to share some thoughts that I was having on this Sunday afternoon. And again, kind of random here, so bear with me. So let me go ahead and share some ideas here. And what I want to talk about today is the importance of taking action, because, you know, I've looked at what's happened over the last couple of years as we formed the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint, and I see some positive things happening. You know, there's, certainly there's a lot of people out there working to influence a positive change, whether it's in legislation in various states or federal legislation. There's a lot of hard work that's happening to try to make things better. But I want to encourage everybody that's out there to do what you can to help influence change. I think it's really important. I often hear from people kind of that question, like, what can I do? What can I do to help influence change? And there really are a lot of things that you can do to help influence change. But today I want to focus on a couple important opportunities, because I think that we do have a couple really important opportunities right now in terms of helping to influence change. So, you know, again, I'm just going to kind of say a very obvious problem here. And this is from the perspective of, the Alliance in terms of the things that we're trying to influence. But, you know, the problem here is that we know that kids are being restrained, secluded, suspended, expelled, you know, even subjected to corporal punishment in schools and residential facilities, behavioral management programs, and other settings. And we know how damaging that is. And I always say, if we know better, we need to do better. Unfortunately, these practices are still quite common in many places. And what binds many of us together is that, you know, we have been the parent of a child, or maybe a self-advocate that's been, put in these situations where you've been restrained and secluded. We've had these things done to you. Maybe you're an educator that's out there trying to do better. I think we're all kind of connected together by wanting to do better. And of course, we know that these things that are happening to kids, often are affecting disabled children, Black and brown children, children with a trauma history. And, you know, the outcome here is really horrific. You know, kids that are restrained and secluded, or even suspended and expelled, you know, this can lead to trauma. It can lead to significant injuries in the case of, restraint and seclusion, and even death. So we know what the outcome is. And even beyond that, we know what happens in terms of what happens to kids down the road in the school to prison pipeline. So, you know, when we look at things that are happening in some of our institutions like schools, you know, at best, I think these are outdated crisis management approaches. And at worst, they're really systemic child abuse. They're things that continue to be done to kids and are doing great harm. So I think we're all bound together in that idea that we need to do something. So again, just, you know, as this may be a little random, but was floating through my mind today, I thought, well, gee, I want to share some things that people can be doing. And it looks like my slide deck is not cooperating here, so hopefully it will. If not, there we go. And of course, it went forward with all the slides here. But let's talk about what we can do. And when I say we, I mean everybody. I mean, you know, all of you out here in our audience, and those that you might know. If you want to support people and help to get rid of these things that are, again, causing a lot of damage, you can do something. And, you know, I'm a firm believer that, and, you know, maybe this sounds silly, but I really do believe that we can change the world. And when we bring people together, we really can have a lot of influence. So I'm not going to go over everything that we can change today, but I wanted to highlight an opportunity here, because I think there are a couple things that we can do right now to help influence change. And they're not hard to do, but they take a little commitment, and we need people. We need you out here that are listening to this to make a phone call or make an email or, you know, provide some feedback. So I'm going to share two opportunities. One is supporting the Keeping All Students Safe Act, and another is providing public feedback to the Office of Civil Rights. And again, there we go. So let's talk about the Keeping All Students Safe Act. This was legislation that has been reintroduced recently And I say recently because the Keeping All Students Safe Act, in one form or another, has been introduced, oh geez, over a decade. We know this bill has come up and been introduced and not gone forward. This needs to be the time that this goes forward. We can't continue to know what's happening out there. In 2009, the Office of Civil Rights did a report looking at restraint and seclusion, and used the words abuse as they talked about what was happening to kids, many of whom were disabled, Black and brown, the same issues that we're seeing today. And to know that that's been going on for the last decade and we've not, been able to stop it, it's got to stop. And I think that the Keeping All Students Safe Act is a step that we can take to work in the right direction. This would make it illegal for schools that receive federal funding to use seclusion. So it would get rid of the use of seclusion. It would also get rid of restraint practices like prone and supine restraint that can affect breathing. It would add and better equip school personnel with training and strategies to more effectively work with kids. And any of you that have been following the work that we've been doing at the Alliance, there are far better things that we can be doing. There are models out there, whether it's Ross Green and Collaborative and Proactive Solutions, or Caru, or using an educational neuroscience framework. There's a lot of things out there that we can be doing to better support our children. And we need to do that. So supporting the Keeping All Students Safe Act is a great way to begin, doing that. And it's simple. I mean, this is really not complicated, but we need people to do it. Not just think, hey, that's a good idea, but to take a few minutes of your time and actually write a letter, send an email, make a phone call. This is it. I mean, this is time to act. And, again, I think we're in a position right now that legislation like this could pass. But not without people taking action to try to make it pass. It's not going to happen on its own. So I think it's important that we're not on the sidelines, that we're doing what we can. And it can be as simple as writing an email or letter to your elected officials. And really all it needs to do is say kind of who you are and that you support the Keeping All Students Safe Act. You might give some reasons why you support it. You might, if you have a personal story, share some of that as well. At the end, really just ask them to support this legislation. That's what's important, is making the ask. You can move beyond that as well if you want to do other things. For instance, you can, and again, this is an alternative. You don't have to send that email or letter. You can simply call, and you can actually call the Capitol switchboard, who can put you in touch with your representative's office. We've got the number here. It's 202-224-3121. But if you call that, that number, you can get connected directly with your elected officials' offices, and you can ask them to support the Keeping All Students Safe Act. 30-second phone call. That's all it takes. Now, if you want to do more, you can. You can ask to make an appointment to meet with the, your representative's team. You may or may not get a meeting with the actual representative, but even if you're meeting with their legislative director, policy director, or someone else, you're going to be able to get your message across. And again, these things may sound like they're scary and complicated, but they're not. It could be a simple phone call or Zoom meeting with your representative's office where you share your story, you hold up a photo and talk about who this is important to and why, and you appeal to them to support this legislation. So I want to encourage you again, take a few minutes, make a phone call, send an email. It's really important. We especially need to get support in the Senate. So, meeting or asking your states or your senators to support this legislation is really, really, really critical. We also have a second opportunity I want to highlight here, again, just kind of randomly, but this has been really on my mind. It's great that we have a really amazing group of people that are part of our community. And I know many of you are doing things to take action. And somebody just asked if this is specific to America. Yes, at this point, what I'm talking about is really specific to the United States in terms of legislation and the Office of Civil Rights. But what I would say is that we do have a large international following here as well. And here's, I think, the benefit to others that, if you're in, the UK or Australia or Canada, what's happening in the United States can also have influence in other places as well. And vice versa, to know that other places are doing better. So I think it's important to be aware of what's happening in other places, and that can be used when you talk to your own representatives wherever you might be. So I want to mention the Office of Civil Rights request for information. This is something that recently went out where the Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, put out a request for information. This is basically the government saying, we want to give you an opportunity to provide feedback. Now, often when this kind of thing happens and a government, puts out an opportunity to provide feedback, you know what happens? Very few people provide feedback. One, they may not know about it. These are published in what's called the Federal Register. If you don't happen to be looking for them, you may not know these opportunities even exist. I will tell you from spending years working in government that feedback can be taken very seriously, but only if you take the time to make it. So it's really important for you to consider making feedback to the Office of Civil Rights and to encourage others to do so. So what they're looking for is the Office of Civil Rights is the part of the Department of Education who is tasked really with ensuring that civil rights are not violated in our schools. And they collect the data. So OCR collects data on restraint, seclusion, different forms of punishment. That's published in a report that comes out as well as on the OCR website. If you've never looked at the OCR website, and maybe we'll do something on this sometime, but you can go there, put in your school district and find data about your school district. Now, as many of you are probably thinking right now, that data is not always the best. They often don't do a great job reporting their data, but there is data there. What you see on the left here is a report that they put out recently about restraint seclusion. I will mention to our friends at the Office of Civil Rights that might be watching this, I think it was very poor taste to use a photograph of kids smiling on a report about restraint and seclusion where kids are injured. Nonetheless, this is a report that provides summary information about restraint and seclusion, which tells us that there are civil rights issues that are occurring. So OCR right now has put out an open request for information. It is a chance for you to go and provide feedback related to discipline. Specifically, they're looking for things about discipline, which could include restraint and seclusion, suspension and expulsion. And this is published on their website as well. But this is an opportunity for you to make your voice heard. And, you know, again, if we look at the OCR data, so they're asking for our input about, where there could be violations of civil rights. Look at this data here. We can see that 80% of the restraints happen to kids with disabilities, 77% of the seclusions. I don't know that OCR should need our help pointing out that this is a civil rights issue, but we don't want to miss the opportunity to share with them our concerns. And those concerns can be whatever they may be for you. I know I have my own concerns about the lack of action being taken by the Office of Civil Rights. Collecting data alone is simply not enough. We can't simply say, well, we collected the data, we saw a problem, we didn't do anything about it. I believe the Office of Civil Rights does need to be more proactive. They shouldn't be relying on complaints to be made. And very often, I'm sure we've had people that will watch this that have filed complaints and realize that that process has not gone as well as they might expect. So we know the disproportionality issue exists here. But again, this is an opportunity for us to provide feedback. Again, Black and brown students disproportionately restrained, secluded, suspended, expelled, and led down that school to prison pipeline. So we have an opportunity now to provide feedback to the Office of Civil Rights. And this feedback, in essence, should be used to help inform guidance to the Department of Education, hopefully also guidance to the Office of Civil Rights, who can be doing more and really doing more to prevent what we know are the violation of civil rights that are happening. So they're looking on things, they're looking for feedback on things like exclusionary discipline practices, suspensions, expulsions, corporal punishment, inappropriate use of seclusion and restraint, and discipline. So this is another opportunity for you to take a few minutes and provide feedback and share your stories and experiences. I can't urge you enough because, oftentimes these calls go out and people don't provide feedback. But if you provide feedback, I will assure you, I mean, these things are generally taken seriously. Will it immediately affect change? Perhaps not. But I will, again, encourage you that the potential is there to impact change, especially if we combine our voices together and really try to make a difference here. So I would encourage you to do that. If you want to provide feedback, you go to, I made a short link here to make it simple. My link is bit.ly/tellOCR. And I'll show you that in here in a second. So I'll show you what you'll actually see. They're asking for comments by July 23rd. That said, I'd encourage you to do it tomorrow. The sooner you do it, the better. We all are busy. We all have a lot on our plates, but the sooner we get something done, the more likely, of course, it is to get done. So let me stop this for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bring up a couple other things to share with you. So bear with me. The first thing I'm going to share with you is the link to the notice that's in the federal registry. And if you come and learn about this, it tells you we are, the Office of Civil Rights is requesting information regarding non-discriminatory administration of school discipline. Of course, we know there's a lot of discrimination that happens there regarding children with disabilities and Black and brown children. So there's a lot of opportunity to provide feedback here. There's a summary there of what they're looking for, but it then gets very specific. And again, I mentioned this a minute ago about the kinds of feedback that they're looking for. And again, this is probably one of the reasons they often don't get as much feedback as they should, because they have a 4 or 5 page document outlining the process. It's really not that complicated, though, and I'm going to show you how to make the feedback in a second. But you will see that this provides the kind of information they're looking for. So this is, please address one or more of the following issues. And I just lifted a couple of them that are near and dear to, I think our hearts here, like corporal punishment, restraint and seclusion. These are things that they're looking specifically for feedback on. So this is a really great opportunity for us to provide that feedback. So let's talk about how you do that. And I'm going to use the link that we created here, which will hopefully work for me here. So it's bit.ly/tellOCR. And that brings you to a page that looks like this. And I realize that it may be hard to see my screen here completely, but I just want to show you that you put in that link, it brings you to a form where you can put your feedback. And they offer you some guidance here as well. You notice here at the top, it says, this is what you're providing feedback on. Their requests for information regarding non-discriminatory discipline practices. You simply could come here and begin providing feedback by beginning to type. You can select a category for your feedback. You also can upload documentation. So if you have recommendations on what they should be doing, you think, and I'm just using this as an example, but rather than using behaviorism, you think that they should be using collaborative proactive solutions. You could upload a fact sheet here about that information. You then, of course, would put your email address and say whether you're an individual or an organization or would rather be anonymous. Again, if you're with an organization, put the feedback through the organization and send your own personal feedback. It's not hard. It's really like writing an email. You just put your comments in, you'll come down to the bottom, you'll hit the lovely CAPTCHA thing and submit comments. That's it. It's that easy to submit those comments. And again, this does not need to be great literature, but it needs to get to kind of what the point is and what your concerns are and how we can do better at eliminating the kinds of things that are happening in our schools. If you want to learn more about the request, if you click on this link here, and it's just asking me if I want to, since I started something, it brings up more information about it. And you can actually download, this looks very old school here, you can download the RFI, and that's a fancy way of putting the requests for information. And that will bring up a PDF file, which unfortunately I can't show you right this second, but that PDF file has that same information that we saw a minute ago when I showed you what was in the link. So let me close this out here. I'm trying to do things on multiple screens here. One other thing I want to hit is if you don't know who your elected officials are, there's a number of ways to find that out. One of the links that I've used before, and let me, this is all live, so it may or may not work the way I intended to. Oops, that is not the one I was looking for. I was looking for, and we'll Google it because that'll make it even easier. Find my representatives. Okay, and I'm trying to work on 2 screens here, so bear with me. And probably, okay. So there's a number of links that come up here, and there's one that I've used here before called Common Cause. And if you put in your information, which I've already done, it brings up all of your elected officials. So for instance, if I want to know, and all you have to put in is your zip code, it tells me that my senators are Chris Van Hollen and Ben Cardin. There are links here to your senator's offices. I also know my representative is Steny Hoyer. So it's really easy to find out who those folks may be, in terms of finding your representatives. So anyway, that's really what I wanted to share with you today. And again, there's always more that you can do as well. But I want to encourage people to do, to do something. It's easy sometimes to think that, others are going to be doing it. Others are going to be providing comment. I'm not qualified to provide feedback. It's easy to kind of think that your voice doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. And I know a lot of the folks out here in our audience, you have stories, your parents, your self-advocates, your teachers, your administrators, your people that have been living, through much of the problems that we have right now. And your voices are so critical to impacting change. So anyway, just wanted to encourage that. I'll look real quick in the comments because I've just been running my mouth and not really looking over here to see if anybody asked any questions. Let's see. Mina said that she's already contacted her U.S. representative and senators to support CASA. That's fantastic. Yeah, and is encouraging others to do things. Yeah, Nicole, I agree with you. Very poor choice in the pictures. It looks like other people are doing this as well. I don't know if anybody has any questions. If you do, let me know. Christina, good to see you out there. I'm glad this is helpful. Feel free to share this as well. I just did it as a quick little live just because this has really been on my mind about, what can we do and how do we, how do we encourage all of you that are out there to really make your voices heard, because it's going to take us, it's going to take others to really push for these things to happen. And the more phone calls a senator's office gets, the more emails they get supporting this, the more it's going to be on their radar. OCR wants feedback. We are absolutely obligated, I think, to provide that feedback to them. I know that while I have been critical, I know there's a lot of people working hard and trying to protect the civil rights of kids within OCR. I think there's probably a lot of people really doing a lot of good work. And as these things go, probably don't have the resources they need and whatnot. But we've got to focus on what needs to be done to make this better and, make our voices heard. So at any rate, I just want to check here one more time. Okay. I want to thank you guys. I expected this to just be a couple quick minutes, but thank you for joining me tonight and appreciate it. And again, please share this. Please encourage people. Somebody asked if we have any sample templates. And there are some sample templates. I did stop sharing my screen, but let me just see if I can pull it up again. So we've done some things and in terms of like CASA, for example. And let me try to see if I can pull that up for you real quick. In terms of a sample template, and I'm going to try to pull this up real fast, and let's go ahead and just live dangerously. I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. And see what I can do here. All right. Okay. So we've had a couple articles. Our website is endseclusion.org. So if you go there, we've got an article here that says supporting the Keeping All Students Safe Act. If you open that article, there's actually a guide to writing your representative there. That was written by Alex Campbell, who is a probably 16 years old now, I believe. Alex Campbell is a 16-year-old autistic self-advocate that's part of our team. He wrote a really great piece on how to contact your representative and includes in here also a very simple template, what your letter might look like, as well as a sample letter. I'll put a link to that over here in the chat. So hopefully you can see that. I do know that COPA, which is the Council of Parents, Attorneys, and Advocates, they also have a very simple template as well that you can use. But again, in any of these communications, it's simple. Don't feel like it's complicated. It is who you are, what you think. You're supporting CASA. It's why it's important to you. If you have an experience with this, you share it briefly. And again, thank them for their support. In terms of writing to OCR, I think it's sharing your opinions and experiences related to discipline issues, related to restraint and seclusion, related to corporal punishment. So anything that you've been through, it's making those concerns heard. Again, this doesn't have to be overly complicated. Something very simple that states your concerns and opinions are absolutely fine. So anyway, I think that's all I see in terms of questions. I want to thank everybody again for getting on with me for a few minutes tonight. And you know, I'm thinking I might do a couple more of these kind of randomly as things are popping through my head. I'd love to maybe another time do a tour of looking at data in the Office of Civil Rights or other things that are a little less planned than our normal presentations, but hopefully helpful. So thank you. I hope you all have a good evening, and I will speak to you again soon.